welcome to the Nerd Show. I'm your host, Mayank, and it's my great honor to present to you our today's guest, Shesha Krishnapura. Shesha is Intel Fellow and IT Chief Technical Officer, and he's been working at Intel for past 34 years. His journey is truly inspiring, and we all have so much to learn from his experience. So, yeah, hi Shesha. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mayank.
Yeah. So your journey is really amazing, like 34 years, like more than 3 decades. Like if you could go back to Bangalore, maybe like where it all started from India, could you tell us your journey from Bangalore to Silicon Valley, how it all happened? So, like, if you could just tell us, yeah.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for having me on your podcast. The I'm excited to provide the folks on their career development what once long career journey in the technology field shapes up. Okay, so it's always surprises which one will see it, but one has to shape it. One has to give it a direction, and one has to build their career based on a solid foundation of ethics, and through that build credibility and continue to learn. So it all began. I was born and raised in Bangalore, and the first 25 and a half years I was in Bangalore, and I did my undergrad in UEC, which is the University of Shesha College of Engineering. Now probably it is called different. What's the name? I don't. I still think it's the same name, but anyway, it's near KR Circle, close to the Vidhan Sauda. So that's where I did my engineering in electronics and computer engineering. And then I worked in a startup company for the first 9 months called Micro Advance, where I was a systems engineer for the IBM PC-80, Apple IIe, and that's where my computer stuff geek started. And then after 9 months, I felt that I had to do my masters, and then working full time in a at Micro Advance wouldn't open up I will have enough time to prepare. So I wanted to do GATE and then get into within India to master's part. So I thought I should go back to UC and do a teaching assistant or part-time lecturer, whatever it is called, and then use the time to prepare. That was how I went there. But within a month, I got job in Indian telephone industry, ITI switching R&D. But I still was not sure to take that job, so I decided to push it for a late join. 3 months, I was able to teach the students on electronic circuits for the third year electronic students and second year computer science people, the digital circuits. So I fell in love in teaching. And at the same time, after 3 months, I said, okay, let me go back and had an opportunity to work full time as well as Thursday afternoon where we had half day, and then Sunday I can go back and teach. So for 3 years at ITS switching R&D is where my foundational stuff really honed in computing. So we were using Intel microprocessors and 8085, and we had a digital switching systems. Started with a base unit of 256 lines, with two of them making 512 512 lines switch. Then the next switch we were working on a 2K line. Our competitors were C dot at that time. So it was a very good learning, and I learned from a lot of experts in that area. And we used to work till past 2 a.m. Even though we are in public sector, we used to sleep on the table, take all this printed rollout of the paper, the dot matrix printer, and put that as our bed, and at 2 o'clock work till 2 and then sleep, and then get at 6 a.m. and then take the factory bus back to home, take shower, and then come back again. So We really worked hard and learned a lot. So I did the real-time operating system there. I was in the software, uh, all of it in assembly level programming, and learned quite a bit. So that was the how I learned for 3 years and looking at all the Intel, all the spec sheet, spec books. And also, I used to teach Thursdays afternoon, like introduction to microprocessors and other stuff. So it was a very, deep with my students working, studying and working. So when my students were graduating, when they started taking their GRE and TOEFL and they wanted to come for masters to US, I thought, oh, okay, a new part. So after 3 years, I started taking along with them the same thing, and then I came to US in 1989 August.
Yeah.
So I went to Oregon State University, did my computer science masters, did the PhD qual, and while I was going through that, then I got a job at Intel in '91, and I was very. It was a very exciting position. That's where I had learned everything deep. So I joined Intel and never looked back.
Amazing. Truly amazing. One thing I noticed is that very early in your career, you started teaching. So I think teaching has always been part of your journey. And you might have taught a lot of people, and not just in colleges, but maybe at workplace, you must have guided a lot of people, right? So if you could tell someone who is just starting his career, maybe, early 2, 3 years of his software engineering job or something like that, what exactly he should focus on. I One thing is hard work for sure, but we have seen over the decades that just hard work doesn't mean that you will get successful, maybe. So, like, to be actually good at something, what one can do other than just hard work. So, if you could just guide us.
That's a great question, Mike. So I never left the teaching part of my ambition all through my career. I use different forms to teach,
Yeah,
and teaching is the way I actually take time to read, to take time to crystallize the thoughts about how to communicate a specific technology or specific solution or a specific aspect of why things work the way they work and why things can be looked at differently, how to come up with a different innovation and a different design, and how to look at the existing truth of the technologies in a more practical sense, and then make certain decisions on the design decisions. That's how you crystallize when you start thinking. Only when you are able to communicate your synthesized knowledge, it is actually you're reinforcing your own knowledge back to you. When you're teaching, you're not teaching the only the people who are listening to you.
correct,
You're teaching yourself. Okay. So you are honing your own fundamentals again and again and again, if it's the same subject.
correct.
But every time when you encourage the teaching, the style has to be grab the audience, the students or your team members or who are there. You ask a question to them. Okay, I would like to, what do you think it is this?
Yeah,
What do you think it is this? So by that way, you are engaging with them and then they give you an answer. If the answer is close to yours, then you shape it to more perfection. The answer is completely orthogonal, then you say why that answer is probably not the right, and you ask another student. So you engage that part of discussion as opposed to one way teaching. So that
correct.
has been how I've been able to do within the workplace, within my peers, within my team members, within across different business units, and also across a lot of fellow travelers in the industry. In the last 8 years, I had a privilege to teach at Stanford a portion of the class, Introduction to High Performance Computing. ME344. It is offered through mechanical engineering class. It's a grad level course. We offer that class in summer. Both the head of the supercomputing, director Steve Jones and I, and he teaches 60% of the class. I do around 40% of the class, and we have done it for 8 years. And during COVID, in fact, we taught even a fall class, CS74, which is a computer science offered.
Mhm.
So every year when I go there and I teach the class, it's on the architecture, it's on about hyperscale design, how the fundamentals of everything about network, power, data centers, server architecture, CPU architecture, every aspect of it, how one has to make a decision, how to build a supercomputer and why certain decisions are made, and teaching the fundamentals. It reinforces about how to come up with a brand new analogy and tell these during the summer class. The summer class is open not just to the Stanford students, grad, undergrad students, but also to the public. For example, in my last year class, I had folks from Google, I had folks from Meta and many other industries taking the class to hone themselves. And I also do seminars at Stanford about either what's how to deal with the data center power growth. Is the
Yeah.
electricity with so limited? How do you deal with the carbon footprint, green computing? So there are various aspects. I work with the professors at Stanford about how with to make a proposal to Department of Energy about how to come up with the most energy efficient designs in the data centers and whatnot. So teaching has to be part of one's career as more of a voluntary basis as opposed to for a remuneration based basis. So that actually builds some kind of a connections with multiple different generations of the audience. And Stanford, for example, has given me where people come from all parts of the world for this summer class. For 2 months, they come, they actually stay in the dorm and they take the class and do. You understand how the world is, the different folks from coming from different parts of the world, they're thinking about technology, the same subject. So I suggest everyone to be teach through different mechanisms. Like, for example, coach your high school students, or go to your school where you graduated from elementary school or middle school or high school. I have gone to elementary school here where I take a open box computer and I teach them, hey, how do you think the computer, when I turn on the power, what happens? What is boot means? What's a boot sequence means? How does it gets alerted? So it's when I was teaching a third grade students and when I was asking interactive questions, they were so excited. And I can tell you, they
Yeah.
came up with a much better answer than many of the grad students in Stanford for some of the basics. So what I'm trying to say, when the mind is not cluttered with too much of what you keep hearing, but if it
Yeah.
is completely open, the curiosity, the thoughts which you get out of them is huge. Same way, I've engaged with high school students here and also the undergrad students in the local college like San Jose State or community colleges. So I hired them as student, workers, work study program at Intel. So they come and they are part of it. We teach them and they learn, they contribute. So it's a very good pipeline. So I suggest everybody to look at, get engaged with your education system wherever you are at every level, and take a portion and teach them, make it an excitement part of your life. By that way you're connected with multiple generations and you learn a lot.
I really love this idea. I actually implement it in a similar way, but I try to teach myself. But yeah, teaching to others is the better way to learn something for sure. Uh, Truly amazing. So now that you mentioned a lot of stuff which you have done in your career, like aggregated servers, this is something which I was studying about recently. So you pioneered disaggregated servers at Intel. So for our listeners, like if you could explain it, like what problem does that solve, and how you actually came up with whole design and made it into reality. So if you could just take us through.
That's a yet another great question.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I told you that I don't need questions up front. I want you to surprise me. So thank you. And so let me give you what is disaggregated server really means. Okay,
Yeah.
before we go to disaggregated server, let's talk about what is a server. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't expect everybody who listens to this are only the tech computer science technology people, but also could be in different aspect of mechanical engineering or civil engineering, or even in finance, business, administration, marketing. Could be different skills. I would like
Okay.
this podcast to be more helpful about for people to understand. So before we get to the server, let's talk about a phone. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if you take as smartphone, now everybody has it. Now, most of the times, when you like a certain form factor. Okay, I like small form factor phone.
Yeah.
Okay, because it fits in my pocket, it's handy, it's not bulky, and it is lightweight and whatnot. Okay, for example, this is like I'm still on a old this iPhone 6 SE. So after say iPhone 6e, I wanted smaller form factor, very very close to that. So
Yeah.
now, if you look at this iPhone, for example, now you get used to it. We all tend to gravitate kind of, because we use these devices so closely,
Yeah.
we become kind of uh, fall in love with our own device, whether not because of the usage, but it becomes part of you, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you don't have it, it feels like you lost something. It's not just the part, the device becomes a part of you.
Correct.
Now if you look at that particular device, now many people, what they do is that, oh, if it is not charging, it loses the battery, becomes no longer it holds the charge. They always have a battery pack connected at some point to say that, hey, I want to upgrade, I want a better camera, I want to go through this and the stuff, so they change. But your use of phone is specific needs where the existing features are meeting all your needs.
Yeah.
Then it's only the certain things which are not there in the phone. For example, the battery is not holding the power. Can you just change the battery of the phone so that you can extend the life of the phone for 2 more years, as an example? Okay.
Yeah.
So, what is the value of that? The value of that is that, of course, the cost efficiency. You
Correct.
did not, pay for the full phone, and you still have your favorite device with you.
Yeah.
And now replacing the battery with a lost, apart from lost, lot cost effective. Now it will not have that deficiency of not holding the charge. And personally, I have changed my bought the batteries from Amazon, and I've replaced myself. So there is a YouTube, you learn and other stuff. Only you have to
Hmm.
keep on practicing certain things. Okay,
Yeah.
now from the phone to the, let me get to the server.
Hmm.
Server, typically when people buy the servers, okay, people buy in the industry largely called rack mount servers. A rack mount
Okay.
server is like a pizza box, and it is always, whether it's a server storage network, they have a certain standards called 19-inch width, is what it is. And then they go in the height wise, they go into 1U, 2U, 3U, like that.
Yeah.
So 1U means 1.75 inches height. But the depth of the server itself, that the sheet metal framework itself is variable. For example, Ethernet switches are shorter, then the storage edge is little longer, whereas the compute, depending on whatever it is, it could be as long as possible. So now when you buy a server, let's say a 1U or a 2U server, height wise. So these servers, typically people in the standard was two socket server, which is two CPU sockets with each one having multiple cores, and each socket having its own associated memory, if it is a NUMA architecture, non-uniform memory access. And then each server comes up with multiple fans, which to typical servers are front to back air cooled. So it has to pull the air from the front cold aisle to throw the hot air in the back. And typically you put the low power entities in the front of the server, like drives and other stuff, ssds or electromechanical drives. And then you put the fans, then you put the cpu sockets. And
Right.
these sockets are interleaved. That means they're not one behind the other, they're just separated, so that the heat sink on top of it from the one does not throw the hot air from on the other one. So
Yeah.
then the memories are in. So then you have each server. Now you want that server to have a big uptime. So what are all the redundant? So you need extra fan if there one fan goes down.
Right.
You need to be able to hot swappable drives. Then you need, if not one power supply, you need two power supply, because if one power supply goes down, the other power supply can continue to work, where you can take the burnt out power supply and then replace it. Then similarly, the network ports outside, you need to have redundant network ports, so that if there is one cable problem, the other one can run. So this is how a server is designed. So typically what people used to do is that every 4 to 5 years, even now, they actually, or even some cases even 6 years, very early it would be 3 to 4 years, that has gone to 4 to 5 years, now more of 5 to 6 years, depending, because people are getting a lot more out of each server, and servers are more expensive due to lot more memory and lot more capabilities they want like to buy.
Yeah.
Okay, so now these servers, when they replace, they take out the entire server and the whole part and replace with a new server. In 20 years ago or 15 years ago, what people used to do is that, oh, you buy a server from one vendor. Let's say today is, you got a deal and you bought server from Dell, and one whole rack worth of servers. Okay,
Yeah.
multiple racks. So it came with their own rack and their own servers, their own, whatever the specs. Then in 15, 20 years ago, then what they did is that if they wanted to replace with some other, vendor,
Hmm.
because they got a better deal or a better feature, whatever the case may be, the whole rack used to be taken out of the data center, and a new rack was brought in. The
Yeah.
rack itself is a standard 24-inch wide and 42U typical racks, and it's a sheet metal. Why you want to change from one vendor to the other vendor? It has a monogram. Is that the reason? People just replace because everybody did that. Same way, if you look at the server, now they replaced the whole server. Whereas the only reason you wanted to change the upgrade the server is because you wanted more performance per core, or you wanted more cores, or you wanted more memory per core. Other than that, your network your workload wanted to use that, but your network part of it stayed the same for 10, 20, even 30 years, depending on whatever network bandwidth you needed in the back. And the drive's capacity was good enough. Okay. But still, the whole thing was thrown out.
Got
So
it.
when you study that over the course of the period, then you figure it out that when did we change the fans at home? So when I go to Bangalore, my mother still has 45-year-old or 50-year-old, I should say, the ceiling fan, Oriental fan, it's still working. The
Yeah.
same knob, same thing. It didn't go down. Okay. When did we change the kitchen exhaust fan or bathroom exhaust fan? Only when it burns out. Then
Yeah.
why every 4, 5, 6 years, all those fans which are perfectly working in the server we throw out. Now let's talk about power supply. What do power supply do? They take, for example, in the US standard 240 volt, the three-phase power, and each power supply is a single phase which you connect into, but maybe two different phases you may bring in. But that power supply, what does it do? It will convert AC to DC. It converts the 240 alternate current into 12 volt DC with enough amperage. So these conversions include what are the components inside the power supplies. They are the capacitors, current transformers, and some resistors, and basic AC to DC conversion. The technology inside that, it's been perfected decades ago. It's
Yeah.
already 95, 96% more efficient, gold standard in converting AC to DC with no loss. These power supplies Many of the power supplies don't burn out and last for 12 to 20 years. And if your power needs of the server did not increase or change, then you are throwing away that power supply. And if you look at the drives, electromechanical drives, SAS drive, for example, or SATA drives, we term called AFR, annual failure rate. This annual failure rate is, when you look at it, it's only 0.8%. That means that in 10 years, only 8% of the drives fail.
Yeah.
So then why do you have to replace the drives? If the drive size you don't need to change. So there are many different. If the network did not change, why do all the network components, network cable, everything has to change and everything has to be taken out and wired? So much time. So you are creating a lot of e-waste, not just
Correct.
electronic waste, also sheet metal waste, all the other waste, plastic waste, so many waste you create. To manufacture all of it, it requires more time, more energy, more resources, natural resources. Now
Correct.
you are throwing away all of that. So now I switch from rack mount servers to blade servers. Why I fell in love with blade servers? What is blade server? A blade server is that it's a chassis where you have the server motherboard,
Mhm.
where the CPU complex, which is the CPU and the DRAMs, and the
Mhm.
network complex, which is all the LAN on motherboard and all the network part of it, plus your SAS controller if you are using electromechanical drive, plus your SAS drives, or if it is just the SSD if you are using, all those are the motherboard. But the actual the mechanicals, which is the fans and the power supplies, are shared between multiple of these motherboards.
Yeah.
So what's the advantage of that? So for example, in a 3U servers, if it is a one socket, if you're based on Xeon E, the more desktop based Xeon version, you can actually put 14 servers in a 3U or 28 servers in a 6U form factor. Okay. Or if you are looking for a standard Xeon scalable processor, then you can put two socket or a single socket in a server and 10 of them in a 6U chassis, but with a shared power supply and a shared chassis controller, shared network switch, and all that stuff. So instead of top of the rack switch, you're actually doing the network domain to a smaller part of it, so that you're aggregating network. So there is a mid plane which connects into back into it. So the advantage of it is now in a 6U chassis, whether you are doing 28 blades on a Xeon entry level or a 10 with a fully beefed up two socket high-end Xeon scalable processor, whatever the case may be, then you are only using 3 to 6 power supplies, or even some cases maybe even 8 power supply, depending on the power needs. And each of these power supplies are 2.2 kilowatt, and they're converting AC to DC. And then you only depend on what you need. And then some are fan units, some are fan and power units. Then there is a chassis controller which does out of band management. Those component standards for a long time, so you can still do that management. Network switch your standards, you're not changing. So when you are refreshing 4 or 5 years later, you say that, hey, I'll keep the chassis, I'll keep the network, I'll keep the power supply, I'll keep the fan units, I'll keep the chassis controller and switch. You only
Yes.
give me the motherboard. You only send me
Correct.
the mother. Then you are actually saving a lot of those already installed capacity. You take this blade server from the front and you put the new blade server.
Correct.
And I fell in love with Blade because when I was in Bangalore, when I was working ITS switching R&D, all these line cards and trunk cards, what we call in the digital switching systems, they're all blades. So these
Yeah.
blades, if you go in a chassis and other stuff, I always did it for 3 years. So for me, when I saw the first blade servers, it was natural to me. But many of the people who have not worked in the telecom industry, when they are only working in server industry, for them rack mount is a standard, and they never understood there is a better way of doing it.
Correct.
So now the question here is that if you didn't change the network switch,
Mhm.
okay, when you didn't change the network switch, why the network component on this server needs the server motherboard has
Mhm.
to be changed.
Correct.
So can that need not have to be changed? Then what do we do on the motherboard? Then Next one is, hey, if the drives or annual failure rate is only 0.8%, if you don't want to change the drive and associated SAS controller and all that, then can we have the network? Can we have the SAS controller? Can we have all of it as an IO complex and then have a CPU complex, separate them out?
Yeah.
So the analogy is that if you take a ceiling, I mean the light bulb, okay,
Yeah.
then we had a incandescent bulb, 100 watt. You got some amount of light. Probably in India we paid, I remember probably 50 paisa for each light bulb, if I remember it right. And then it used to burn out once in 2 years, and then you replace the bulb. Okay. So what did that bulb use? So it used the 220 volts and 50 hertz or 60 hertz in India. So
Okay.
I'm trying to think. So we hertz, because the US standards are different. So it's
Hmm.
so then we use that light bulb and put it. Then we had, for fluorescent light, it's a different choke, and you need to have the choke and other stuff. It needs to create that and not part of it. But just stay with the incandescent light bulb.
Yeah.
When the incandescent light bulb used to burn out every 2 years, and then the filament used to go and it used to use more power. Then
Hmm.
the compact fluorescent light, CFL, came. So instead of
Okay.
100 watt, it used 26 watt. It produced the same amount of light, and it lasted for 6 to 10 years. And it used was cheaper to operate and less electricity it used. It costed a little bit more, but it went into the same socket.
Okay.
Okay. But if you say that, oh, the whole socket has to be changed, the whole wiring, whole electrical current has to be changed, then people would not have changed the light bulb. Then
True.
came LED light. So LED light used 13 watts, gives you same amount of light, lasts for more than 20 years. It costs a little bit more initially, but now the prices have come down significantly, and you change the light bulb. But all, whether incandescent bulb, CFL, or LED, they all went into the same socket, same screw type, and went into the same place. So
Yeah.
then the question here is that, can we look at the server roadmap, the CPU roadmap? Can we look at that part? So what really the value of a server? The value of a server is the CPU and the cores, more features in the CPU, new instructions. For example, for the new AI acceleration, there are new instruction set which Intel has produced in the last 2 3 years, which is part of the servers. So new capabilities and newer, more memory, addressably faster memory, and more cores if you need it, or faster cores if you need it, whatever the case, energy efficient cores. So you have those, the value. So the DRAM and the CPU is the light bulb,
Yeah.
but rest of the things, including the IO complex, is the socket and up. So if you create a pluggable part, which is
Okay.
through the PCI by 16, we came up with this one, a female male connector and other stuff. So we were able to segregate that. Then boom, you actually disaggregated the server. So when you want to upgrade the server for whatever it is, you upgrade only the CPU complex. But we also came up with this accelerator complex with the same PCIe standards you keep, and you put a GPU, or you put an FPGA or an ASIC, depending on the workload changes. Or if the new hard drive technologies came where you are getting a much better, larger capacity, if you need, only change the IO complex.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, there's a brand new network which will give you, because your workload became IO sensitive as opposed to CPU sensitive. So you change only the switch and other stuff. So it became a ability to change only component level, as opposed to throw the whole thing and throw this. Just take an analogy of the car. If the
Yeah.
car engine, has an issue or a tire burst, do you buy a new car every time or throw it, or you only change the components? So why in a server, when others are all good, why do you want to change all of it? So only that you change what you wanted. So take that as an analogy. By doing that, now if I have to buy $100 million worth of servers, by
Okay.
just changing the CPU complex, then I can do it with $56 million. I can save $44 million. So
Okay.
that's a cost saving. Now, from a amount of waste both e-waste, mechanical waste, other plastic and whatnot, sheet metal and electronic components by weight, it is 83% reduction in that combinations of e-waste and other plastic waste and other stuff, which you can avoid. Now, to install a brand new server, 77% reduction in technicians' time. So the idea came on a February 19th,
Mhm.
20, uh, 26, 2020, sorry, 2016, 2016, February 19th, Friday afternoon. In the Intel headquarters, Robert
Yeah.
Noyce building on the sixth floor in a conference room on the 4 hour of intense whiteboard discussion. So me and Vipulal, one of the senior principal in my team, we were there, and then the couple other guys were in Oregon. Another Intel fellow and his marketing staff. So we were in telepresence. We were writing. So February 19, 2016, we just came up with this idea.
Mm.
So I actually, when we were discussing, idea came, put a 10-year roadmap, and I said what we can do. And now, fast forward, we have 22 different versions of the disaggregate server, including accelerator complex and other stuff, where we can put the GPU, either the Intel Ponte Vecchio or any other stuff, or even NVIDIA GPU inside, and the Intel CPUs with the Xeons and various different generations and other stuff. So it has completely changed. A lot of different business companies have adopted, and it is all manufactured. It's a patent which we came up with, and then worked with Charles Liang, who was the founder and CEO of Supermicro. On June 15th of 2016, made a call and went there. 45 minutes intense discussion, came up with the idea. Within 6 weeks, we produced 10,000 of those servers on operated at Intel. So now more than a million of these disaggregate servers have been sold in industry, adopted worldwide, and other stuff. So it is a huge out of box thinking which has
Correct.
happened.
Exactly. Like, just like taking, Indian analogies and like the way you explained, it's sometimes it feels like it should have been done earlier. Like, just thinking about it, it feels like it should have been like that. But of course, to actually come up with the whole design, it's really unique and for sure saves a lot of money and waste, of course. I feel like something which you have done, especially for disaggregated server, I see it in a very abstracted way that sometimes people do over engineering in a lot of things nowadays, but like sometimes the best answers are actually hidden in the simplest solution. Not the simplest in the execution part, but the idea wise. I feel like sometimes like people just over complex things and just try to build everything from scrap and from scratch, and they think that we have to just change everything and change the source, change everything, and then we start building up. But I think the best way to build something is to do to give a solution which disrupt uh, minimal and make changes. I think if you could tell us more like about your thought process on this and like how one who really want to build something which actually change the future, I think there's always going to be scope, you know. So like how one can actually focus on something in such a way that people don't try to overcomplicate things and actually try to find solutions and change the world in a better way.
That's a great question. So again, uh, maybe my background, uh, being born in India and raised in India, where every time we try to reuse as many times as possible,
Correct.
whether it's plastic bags or whether it is paper bags or part of the stuff. The Western world is more of use and throw away is a kind of the mindset, right? So, and unfortunately, Western world is trying to change to reuse, whereas back in India it's about use and
True.
throw kind of mindset. So it's kind of uh, world is changing much more rapidly, than
Yeah.
what we can what we can think of. Sometimes bad habits gets adopted much faster than the good habits. So
Yeah.
now the element, for example, I want to go back to incandescent bulb.
Hmm.
So you probably have never changed an incandescent bulb. I don't think you will know. But many of people in my generation know what incandescent bulb. Okay, it's either Bengal lamps or Philips and whatnot. Okay, so now whenever a light bulb burnt, okay, the filament burnt. So the excitement is take that light bulb out and go to another light bulb which is running, and
Yeah.
somehow try to move it. If it is not fallen on the broad but it's just broken at one point, you
Hmm.
just try to corner it in a part where it just holds it, and you carefully take it and screw it. Suddenly it lights up and it welds itself into that. So then it will last for another few more weeks or few more months. So
Yeah.
then you say that, hey, I didn't. It's kind of an excitement. You
Yeah.
didn't spend money right away. You didn't need to go to the store. You didn't. You reused it for a longer period.
Yeah.
So people used all these vaccine bottles and whatnot, small part. I remember all these vaccine bottles were sent into recycle, but many of them actually collected all these small bottles. And I remember my mother making a small mantup out of that by actually artwork. So it's like a reuse of some of
Yeah.
those things and come up with part of it. This part is in the culture of reuse.
Correct.
Reuse, reimagine, rethink, and repurpose, is a part of the reuse, and revise whatever you are making the same statement again and again to make it even more crisper, even more educational, whatnot. So that when we say research, my cousin told me, I was a scientist D at, I did his master's and PhD in IIT Madras and NIE undergrad, mechanical engineer, Dr. Badri Narayan. One day when high school, he was used to park his motorbike at our place. So I just asked him, hey, what do you do at ISRO? And then he said in Kannada to me, saying that, oh, there's something is lost. I'm trying to find it. I said, why is he saying this? So I did ಯಾವುದೋ ಕಳೆದೋಗಿದೆ ಹುಡುಕ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. So he said
Hmm.
in Kannada. So he's much older than me, and I didn't understand what he really meant. I thought and thought the whole night. And the next day, when he came back again to, take his motorbike, I said, did you mean research? He said, yes. So research, that means that the things are already there. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to search for it. So that's what he was giving me the idea. So that stayed in my head all along, right from high school days. My cousin told me this. So, so this is about the whole thing is the knowledge is probably out there. The more we hear, the more we think,
Correct.
it's always there. And there is one article I read a couple of days ago. There is one Nobel laureate has made, I don't remember the name now. He has said that the mind would have already made a decision much, much faster than a person realizes the decision has been made. So, so that means that our unconscious mind
Yeah.
is much more perfect, much more accurate. For example, when we drive, there is a lot of research which has been done. Many times you are thinking something and you are gone from your home to your workplace or school or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And suddenly you realize that you've reached the destination and you're thinking something. You don't know how you cross the road, whether you cross a red light or not, whether you stopped at the red light or cross a red light, and how you made the turns. You have no idea because the unconscious mind has made perfect decisions for you to drive to wherever you wanted to go. So mind is extraordinarily powerful. Okay. Now, the more you teach, the more you engage conversation, you yourself, the clarity of thought comes into you. the more the clarity of thoughts come to you, and you use the holistic of your life to come up with ideas. Don't say that when you are looking at a programming problem, just don't look at only from a programming standpoint. Look
Correct.
for analogy. When I teach high performance computing at Stanford, I actually don't teach latency and bandwidth. What is latency and what is bandwidth using just whatever this definition of those. I go
Correct.
into freeways. I go into speed limits. I go into, when I teach about computer architecture, I talk about the burners as cores, the countertop as cache, refrigerator has the last level cache, pantry has a local drive, supermarket close by as a storage. So there are many other ways for me to talk about latency and bandwidth,
Correct.
what decisions one has to make. So this analogy has to be there, because whatever you create, it's all based on the what you observe in the nature, what you observe in real life.
Correct. Truly amazing. Like, yeah, I I really feel that there's a lot to actually research. Like, people think that most of the things we might have thought of actually done, or still in progress, like in research. But I feel like there are a lot of things which will be discovered, and if not discovered, then researched, uh, in future and will shape the future for sure. I I think like I really wanted to ask you one question about Moore's law because you have been part of Intel for more than 3 decades. And I remember like even since my early days of engineering, I've always heard of Moore's law from one person to another. And then when I finally joined Intel, I heard it a lot more. But like you might have seen like recently people are saying that Moose Law is dying and maybe I don't know. Like I really wanted to know your take on it. And because you have witnessed Moose Law driving exponential scaling over the decades. So like what is your take on that?
See, first of all, let's define the Moore's law, right? A lot of people don't know what it is, right? I
Correct.
mean, essentially, what Gordon Moore, one of our two founders, Robert Noyce and Gordon Moore, and we always consider Andy Grove as a founder, even though he was not technically a founder. Uh,
Yeah.
and even though his badge was number 4, there was another person who happened to have a badge number 3. So the history of Intel is huge. Okay, the whole Silicon Valley is called Silicon Valley because of
Because of
Intel.
Intel.
Okay, so Steve Jobs used to go to Robert Noyce's home and run into the basement with Robert Noyce and discuss about the things. So Intel has built many of the best and the bright, and then made this possible, right? And Intel has transformed over the period of the decade. So now coming back to Moore's law, it is all about you know the density of the number of transistors you can pack in a given space, doubles every 18 months to 2 years kind of rule. Okay, so
Correct.
based on that rule, if he observed a couple of times and then he drew the line, and then it became that everybody thought, okay, that's a directional statement. The
Correct.
directional statement one has to follow to keep improving lithography, to keep improving, trying to get more transistors in the same space.
Correct.
And transistors are building blocks of any computational device. And then make each of those transistor faster switching on and off position.
Correct.
So first one is the density, right? But more packing in the same space, same
Correct.
die. The second one is make each transistor switch faster, that is the performance. And then make each transistor use less power, which is the power efficiency. So there's a three-dimensional aspect of it which came. But the Moore's law was more about packing more this one part, but the other two are typically people don't talk about. We what we call PPA, power performance, and area. So, okay,
Yeah.
so all the three aspect of it. Now, if you look at see when I this is also part of my interesting tidbits with my students at Stanford during my introduction to high performance computing. So typically, people need to understand what these nanometer really mean. Okay, people don't cannot understand what they have some vague view if you're not in deep into this, but they really don't know what it is. So I keep asking now since COVID, as
Yeah.
I ask the people, hey, what is the size of the COVID virus? Mayank, do you know what's the size of the COVID virus? You want to
No,
take a guess? Take a guess.
I I really do.
Take a guess. How many nanometer? Tell me in nanometer.
Maybe few hundred. I don't know. Wait.
Well, fine.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to put you in the spot, but the point
Yeah.
is that it is around 80 to 100 or 120, depending on the maturity of the virus. Let's say 100 nanometer. Okay.
Hmm.
So if you take 100 nanometer, when did Intel made 40 nanometer? Intel made 40 nanometer more than 15 years ago, right? I mean, if you really look at that part, right? So 2008, I think, 2007, 2008, 2008, 2009. Okay, I myself forget the time frame now. Okay,
Hmm.
so the point which I'm trying to say is that the 14 nanometer was considered one of the hardest problems. Now
Correct.
we went into, but I'll get to the little bit of this part of the nanometers business. This 14 nanometer we are talking about, it's much smaller, which was done, more than 15 years ago, right? Or 17 years ago, is considered was considered at that time. Intel was the in the lithography yield power was leader even up to 14 nanometer. Okay, part of it. Okay, so then the part is that how did this became the element of you know uh, you know actually I take back. 14 nanometer was not in 2008. So 2006 was 45 nanometer. 2008, the 2 years later was 32 nanometer, then became 22 nanometer. 40 nanometer is more, I think, in 2014 or 2012, 2014 time frame. Okay, yeah, 2012, 2014 time frame. So I wanted to correct myself around that time frame. Okay, I may be off couple of years this way, that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just reeling off from my memory. Okay,
Sure.
I'm not looking at any of the notes or anything. So now, if you look at that was considered as one of the hardest problem to solve. I think around 2014. So now the question is that, okay, so you are making a much smaller than a COVID virus. When the COVID came, people didn't know how it spreads, what it is, how it goes. It took a huge number of research people to figure it out, right? When people thought, oh, it happens due to touch, so don't touch people. Okay, 6 feet apart, but they didn't know why they had to be 6 feet. Finally, they found out that it spreads through the air, right? The
Yeah.
density and the volume and other stuff, it catches, and other stuff it comes, and you breathe and breathe, right? Breathe
Correct.
out and breathe in, right? So that's the part. Finally, people figured out it's not, as what they thought, right? So now you talk about the complexity of that. Now you go into a silicon atom. So a size of a silicon atom is 0.24 nanometer. Now
Okay.
Intel has already produced and sampled huge number to a lot of PC makers. In fact, many of the Intel people running these laptops, small
Hmm.
form, thin form factor laptops, regular laptops made of Panther Lake, which is made of 18 Armstrong or 18A or 1.8 nanometer. We are
Correct.
talking about, right? So if you take that 1.8 nanometer and 0.24 nanometer being a silicon atom, so how many atoms are we talking about? Okay, we're
Right.
talking about nine atoms here, right? So we are at an atomic level already. Now Intel is already working on 14A, which is 1.4 nanometers. So you take that, it is by what, 4 plus 5, 5.5 worth of size of a silicon atom, right?
Correct. Correct.
Or six, let's say, close to six, silicon atom size. So if you ask me, when will this Moore law stop? So let's consider that. What is okay? By the way, when people say nanometer in a transistor, they're talking about the width of the gate between the source and the drain. Okay,
Correct.
the width of the gate. The smaller it is faster switching. Okay,
Correct.
and the smaller, the faster, smaller it is, the amount of charge you need to switch is also less. That means it is performance, higher performance, lower power.
Yeah.
But the smaller it becomes, then you can put more of those within a same area. So power performance area, it's advantage. So as you shrink, it gets better. Then you can add more features, so on and so forth.
Correct.
So it's advantageous. But to what extent one can go, it's only the place where we are getting into atomic levels.
Correct.
So let's see what the future holds. So people thought when we did the 40 nanometer is that's it.
That's it.
In fact, Paul Otellini, our CEO, called it as Valley of Death because a lot of people have tried 40 nanometer, they could not get in. But Intel had successfully was able to, make the 40 nanometer. We were the
Correct.
number one, and TSMC and others had tried, but they were at least 2 3 years behind at that time.
Correct.
Now, we are working towards to gain our lithography back into, compete and get to the leadership and get to the part. And I'm very confident that the smartest and the brightest people work. And I always believe failure is the greatest teacher, not the success. So the more you have setbacks, it may be considered as failures. It teaches something. Only the failure teaches you, not the success. If you have only success, you think you perfected it. Your ego rules you. But if you have failures, you become more, the humility, will reign on you. You'll become humble. You'll become more open to listen, more open to possibilities, more open to collaborate.
Correct.
So, hey, it's okay for us to fail, and it's, had lot of failures, and maybe we have learned a lot and we will come out better and ahead. That's the way every
For sure.
company, every industry, every human being has to think. Don't take failures as something that you're not good enough.
Correct.
Be thankful that you failed.
Exactly.
Don't think that you are always successful. You are always able to get 100 out of 100 in a math exam. So
Correct.
sometimes you need to get a problem wrong. Then you know, why did I get it wrong? Where did I miss? How did I miss this? I've solved this same kind of problem 100 times. How did I miss this? Only when you go there and other stuff, what did you overlook will come clear.
Correct.
So once it becomes those, the more the failure you have, the more the corrections you make, then you become a much more better person. It will make you humble. It will make you human. It will make you be able to forgive others when people go wrong. But if you always had only success, you will not be able to forgive others or forgive yourself. So I'm
Correct.
going into to both philosophical and psychological kind of conversations, because I want people to think all our life should not be a transaction.
Correct.
A transaction is that a company pays this much money, so I work this many hours. If they pay more money, I work more. That's a transaction type. Oh, some other company is giving me 20%, 30% raise. Let me quit this company. Let me go to that company. It's a transaction. You keep changing, 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 but you never find roots. You never find, ability to collaborate, ability to have a trust with the colleagues and whatnot. Everywhere
Correct.
you are trying to establish. So for me, Intel has been an institution. It's not just my career. It's a preeminent educational institution where
Correct.
every day I'm learning. I'm learning from my peers. I'm learning from business unit. I'm learning from collaborators, industry collaborators, where I'm learning from them. I'm teaching them. And I tell my team members, or anytime I give a talk, I always think that, hey, when we went to school, we paid to learn, right?
Correct.
When we went to university and whatnot, school, high school, whatnot, and college and whatnot. So we paid to learn. But when we come to workplace, what do? People say, oh, we work. No, 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 no. You're learning and you're getting paid to
Paid
learn.
to learn.
Once you change to that part, paid to learn, every year they give some rise. So every year they're giving you more money to learn the same thing. So
Correct.
now, guess what? At workplace, you can make mistakes, you can fail, your ability to fix without being, of course, if you fail a lot of time, of course your performance report will show different. But in schools, in the exams, if you fail,
Yeah.
again you have to repeat. But here, there are a lot of people, colleagues and team members are there to collaborate and help you, shape you. You're not alone, but you should be able to share your failures and as seek help. So by that way, collaboratively you learn.
Correct.
So I will tell you, at some point, my career at Intel will stop at some point. Hope not very soon. But when that happens, I do not think I'm retiring from Intel. I keep telling I'm graduating from Intel. So that's what the people have to have, that mindset. Life, when we say lifelong learning, that's what it means.
Correct.
You never stop learning. Keep excitement, because the moment the mind stops learning, your life is kind of done.
I I do agree because even when I was at Intel, I truly felt that this is like more of an institution than just a company. And I still feel really grateful. And I have no doubt that Intel will come back much stronger. And yeah, but uh, with one final thought, like I just want to know one advice maybe from you to a guy who might be, my age, like just 24, 25, and like back in your days, maybe the best way is to move to US, and that USA dream, everyone had that. But as you said, the world is evolving, where knowledge is not just limited to particular institutions. For sure, when you actually study there, that is a whole different experience. But if you want to learn something, it's actually out there. You can learn through books and resources out there. What do you think? Uh, like a guy who is trying to figure out and who is in India, maybe a lot of audience might be from India, maybe someone who want to make the best out of his career, maybe corporate or anything. What one advice you would like to give to that person so that for the next 30, 40 years when he worked, he actually remember that? Like if you could.
Okay, that's a great question. So the way in which I see life is that, now, as you mentioned, that most of the knowledge is out there already,
Correct.
right? It's easily accessible. People can go and do search, Google search, and find out an answer too quickly. You don't need
Correct.
to go to a library and look for a book and catalog, and, oh, the book is not there. Some friends go and hide the book somewhere. So for some other friends, and tell them it's there, it's hidden there somewhere. So there is no such thing when we were studying, right? When I was
Correct.
studying, right? Not you. So the part is that the knowledge is much more, the information is much more easily available, and it's free, and you can access many things. Now, the question here is that, the ability to interact with anyone in the world is so seamless. It's not like people go to bed at 9 or 10 in the night and then get up at 6 in the morning, or so, 6:37, and then, that those kind of times when I was growing up, to
correct,
what now is that, for example, taking this interview for your 1 a.m. at this point, right? So the point which I'm saying is that the world has changed from a time standpoint. Okay,
correct,
time is kind of, I will sleep when I can, but I work when I can, when the other person is available, right? So it's
correct,
kind of this hard sunrise to sunset times have been not set for the anymore.
correct.
See, even in the past, if you go back when I was growing up,
Mhm.
do you think the doctors had that, oh, I go to clinic and open our hospitals at 9 and I close at 5 or 6? No, it's not. Only those people work 24 by 7.
Correct,
Okay, the critical services, water, electricity services, fresh water services, sewer services, road services, ambulance services, they all work 24 by 7. Okay,
correct,
so only like banks and traditional jobs, schools, universities, of government offices, commercial stuff were, a different time slot. Okay, you just take that as a frame of mind.
correct.
Now, from that frame of mind, let's go into this. I actually advised my nephew and niece when they finished, all three of them in India are engineers, whereas my two daughters and my brother's son, my nephew here, they're all in medical stuff in the US, and those three back in Bangalore, they're all engineers. So when they thought of coming to do masters in the US and do this one, like what me and my brother and my wife did, so I told them that there is no reason for you to make that trip. What we made that trip in 1989, all three of us, me, my wife, and my brother. So I told them that it is not needed because you really don't need all these. There are so many ways for you to acquire a lot more. You can get the depth first, and then look for breadth.
Correct.
After bachelor's in engineering, I strongly suggest people to work. Okay, wherever they are, they not have to be. If they're in India, in Indian audience, okay, work in your
Yeah,
place. If they're Malaysian audience or Penang or Kuala Lumpur, work there. If
correct,
you are in the Brazil audience here, you work in Brazil. Okay, so because I've been, or in whichever the part of the world you are, you
correct,
work there. Okay, you learn, and make sure that the moment you start going to work, start thinking somebody else is paying you to learn. The moment you switch that, then it becomes that you're not looking at the watch. Oh, you're not looking at it as a transaction, you're looking at it as a purpose. Oh, somebody is paying me to learn, let me learn more, so that
correct,
the time constraint is not there.
correct,
And the second part is that don't try to compete with others. Try to always collaborate. Competition is transaction, collaboration is purpose.
um,
Okay.
yeah,
So, jumping ships, always looking for money and for more promotions or more money is a transaction. Looking for creating something which is last long time, which is greater value is a purpose. Do not look for recognition all the time. Okay, it's okay to have a slow growth, but look for the amount of knowledge you're gaining. So from that perspective, what my advice to everybody is that build your basics, build your foundation. Your foundation has to be number one.
correct,
I'll try to be ethical.
correct,
Satyameva Jayate, when Ashoka printed that as a slogan, and which became our foundational element for all Indians, which is the truth only prevail or truth ultimately prevail, whatever the case may be, however people want to interpret. Always believe that you need to, it's easy to tell the truth. It's very hard to lie, and then you need to say hundreds to make up, even then you cannot.
correct,
Okay. So I suggest that be truthful, work hard because you're working for yourself, you're not working for something. Hard work is about learning. When you are in school, When you were trying to prepare for a test or an exam, you didn't look at the clock. You wanted to finish the subjects. You wanted to really be clarified. You didn't
Correct.
look at the time. So how come that time did not matter to you? When you come to work, why 8 to 5 or 9 to 6 or 10 to 7 should matter?
Correct.
Okay. And the third one is give, share knowledge, don't hide, document and explain, don't hold on to your knowledge, uplift others and be vulnerable. Okay, if you get angry, be yourself. If you get angry unnecessarily, it's even better, because somebody else will say that, hey, you're making a big deal of nothing.
Correct.
They will correct you. So if you hold all your emotions, which are kind of negative emotions yourself, you are suffering inside. Let it out.
Correct.
So be open. Of course, you need to first have it, build trust with others. Don't expect that you trust others before you can expect trust from others.
Correct.
So start so the trust is a simple analogy. You start, there is a glass jar. Imagine a glass jar, a big jar, okay, a cookie jar kind of thing, right? Glass jar, and lot of marbles inside. Okay, each marble is an element of trust. Okay, so with Mayank, I should start with, even though I don't know him,
Yeah.
a couple of times exchange for this podcast, and thank you for you patiently waiting for me. Now you start with the jar full of marbles. Hey, why is this person wants me to do this? So start
Correct.
with the trust. Hey, he's trying to make it a useful to the community. He's trying to create a content. He's trying to make it not just for him, but also help the community. Through various different thought process of people. So
Correct.
start with full jar of marbles, okay, of trust, and then only if your trust got in the other person got broken, then only you'd start taking not the entire all set of marbles. Take only one marble out and
Correct.
try to be truthful with the other person. Hey, this is, I trusted you, but you broke my trust, and try to see whether you can build, because building trust is very, very hard. But start from the full, it's easy. Then you can go down if you want to. So make life more joyful, more purposeful, more free, build on ethics and truth and giving, sharing knowledge freely. Life will be much more happier. People look at their bank balance, stock account, their wealth in real estate and whatnot, their possessions. Those will eventually doesn't make much doesn't give you much happiness. Oh, I have this brand new car, I have this brand new vehicle, or I have this brand new phone, I have brand new this great clothes and great things, and stop that mindset. Look for
Correct.
purpose.
Thanks for this great advice. I think even I really needed to hear this. Uh,
Well,
thanks. Thanks.
I heard myself once again.
Yeah. Uh, Thanks a lot, Shesha, for sharing your life experiences and all the knowledge. It's really great to listen and learn from you. Thank you very much again, Shesha. So,
Thank you, Mayank, and I wish you the very best in life.
thank
And I wish everybody who listens to this, who can practice this, simple rules of life. I'm sure one day they will be able to see the joy, and hopefully they will also share with others. Hey, go and watch this, go and listen to this, or what their experience is, and always give back to the community, and just don't take it from the community. You have to give more than you take. That's the way society runs in a very happy place. Okay, thank you. I
you.
wish you the very best. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Shesha.